Hey, everybody, this is Kenny. Welcome back to the Sports on the Positive Tip podcast, where we have conversations at the intersection of sports and faith. I'll be joined by my partner, Kenny Squared. In just a few seconds, we want to inspire you, in addition to talking a little sports today, but we got to talk to the founder and chief visionary and chief executive officer of the Johnson Leadership Group, Kevin Johnson. Wait till you hear his amazing backstory of 34 years in service and in business and in leadership. Wait till you hear his take on servant leadership as things that we should all be doing. How do you awaken folks' potential? What are some three key ingredients that leaders really need today? What's missing today from leaders? But we also talked a little VCU basketball, a little Wizards basketball, a little Baltimore Orioles, and the great moment that he had at the Olympics. You don't want to miss a second of this. Let's get at it.
This episode is brought to you by Kitcaster. Kitcaster books you on top podcasts. How do funded startup founders attract prospects and talent? Podcast interviews. How do entrepreneurs with exits find new deals? Podcast interviews. How do C-suite execs differentiate in crowded markets? Podcast interviews. Kitcaster books you on top podcasts. Click the link in the show notes for a special offer. Celebrate good conversation.
Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny. I'm joined with my partner, Kenny Squared. This is a special edition of Sports on the Positive Tip, interview edition. We have a phenomenal guest today that is going to so inspire you on a variety of topics, particularly servant leadership. And I don't know if we're going to talk much about the Washington Wizards based on what he just said a little bit ago, but we'll talk a little sports as well towards the end. I want to introduce the founder and chief visionary and chief executive officer of the Johnson Leadership Group. Kevin Johnson has joined us today. Kevin, God bless you, man. Thank you so much for joining us today. How you doing?
Doing good. Blessings back to you and your family as well. All is good. We're enjoying the summertime, and I'm looking forward to being a part of this great podcast that you have. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We got to find your backstory. I'm going to turn it over to Kenny to get us kicked off.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself? How did you get to the place where you are, where you started a whole leadership group?
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, fantastic. I'm a native of Richmond, Virginia. And quite frankly, on my maternal side and my paternal side, going all the way back to my great grandparents, we all grew up in the Richmond, Virginia area. And I attended Armstrong High School, and then I matriculated right there in my hometown to Virginia Commonwealth University, where I went to the School of Business and had a great time, great academic career, met a lot of good people, still really, really good friends with a lot of my college mates. And it was in the School of Business that I began to get really attracted to this whole concept around leading people. People are very unique, human behavior, personalities, how we handle conflict, communication. So very early on, as a 22, 23-year-old, fresh out of college, I started to migrate toward it, but I really wasn't really keenly aware yet. I entered into a career with the federal government. My mom actually is instrumental for helping me to understand the importance of finding a good employer that you would probably stay with for a while. And lo and behold, I took her advice, and I stayed 34 years. I worked for the government for 34 years as a frontline leader, a mid-level leader, and a senior level leader during that phase, Department of Defense and then Department of Treasury. And again, really, really good career, wonderful sponsors, good coaches, good mentors, feeding into me, pouring into me, identifying that potential. And you know what? It means a whole lot. You remember these things. So fast forward, now that I'm retired, now what? Well, I tell people, think about that before you retire. You kind of know in your heart that it's time to step away. And I knew about 5 years before I actually pulled the plug. I knew about 5 years out, approximately when I would retire. So in terms of preparation, I did pick up a couple of credentials and certifications along the way to get credibility. But I also accepted a position that a couple of my mentors and supervisors had been pushing me toward, and I was resisting, and that is chief of staff. Not because it's a very, very important position, and it is,
Mm-hmm.
but wow, serving as a chief of staff gives you a nice round view of the world.
Wow.
And even though we all see the world through our lens, it gave me a different perspective, because now I'm in charge of HR, I'm in charge of IT, I'm in charge of training, I'm in charge of property, security, facilities. I mean, I could go on and on and on. I had to oversee all of this
Mm-hmm.
while maintaining the sanity of the entire staff, which happened to be contractors, civilians, and military personnel, enlisted junior officers, flag officers, and general officers. You talking about what the advice that mom gave me to make that move, and how it panned out to prepare me now for a time such as this, where I spend 99% of my waking hours pouring into the next generation of leaders.
Mm-hmm.
So aspiring leaders, seasoned leaders, and everybody in between and on that spectrum need to know a little bit more than what they know about being a good leader. And so that's kind of my journey there, Kenny, in terms of start to finish at a very high level. And it's just been a good ride. That's why I smile all the time. I'm in my lane, right? This is my gift. I'm in my lane, and I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
So awesome. So awesome. Ken, I'll jump in real quick. Kevin, that's an amazing journey. And I want to start there. What would you say were some skills that you quickly picked up along the way, and that you feel really translate now to leaders today, or bringing up that next generation? What's 2 or 3 top skills that you feel that these future leaders that are coming up today really need to have?
Yeah, so you mentioned 3, and that's a good number. I would put at the top of the list, you have to be organized.
Mm-hmm.
Organization is one of those basic principles that simplifies your life. When you're organized and you know where stuff is when you need it, and it keeps your heart from pumping,
Yeah.
and it keeps you from sweating, because you know where it is. So just being organized. I say the second thing is discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Being disciplined. Discipline has everything to do really with just being laser focused on the task at hand, and just being disciplined and being a finisher, getting things done. Move away from starting and then never finishing, to being that man or woman that starts and finishes.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last thing, and this goes back to human behavior, which I talk about quite a bit, is patience. Because you asked me for 3. You and I have to be patient as leaders, because everybody is in a different place, in a different space.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, Kenny, you may be a very, very high achiever, and you expect the best out of people around you by leading by example. But guess what? Some people in your circles, it's just going to take them a lot longer to get there. And we have to be patient. Everybody is not where we are, and everybody's not where we think they should be.
Mm-hmm.
They're on their own little road trying to navigate life. And our job as the leader is to try to help them to get there. And that takes patience, because everybody's in a different place, in a different space. So some people we can ask one time to do something. We know that they have the confidence and the ability to get it done, because they've shown that they can, and they run with it, and they come back with a phenomenal product.
Wow.
Other people on our team, we have to ask them 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
And it still comes back mediocre.
Yeah.
But don't give up on them.
Yeah.
Have patience. Keep pressing.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. Ken, I'm gonna ask one more, and then I'll turn it back over to you. I just want to continue on this vein, because the chief of staff position, you started glowing when you talked about that, and especially what a way to end, your career.
Mm-hmm.
What was most challenging about that? You mentioned, you had to deal with so many different departments, right? HR and there were folks that were in service, but also civilians. What's a couple of lessons that you took from that position that you pass on to leaders today?
Being flexible and adaptable is really at the top of the chain, because I mentioned those three different groups, right? We have contractors who are really there just to comply with the terms and conditions of the contract that they're under for their company. We hire these companies to deliver products and to render services, and they usually take up residence right there in the government facility. So they're just there to kind of basically do what they're told. Then you have your civilians, those of us that are opinionated. We have thoughts, and we feel free to express them. And then you have the military personnel, chain of command, right? The lieutenant does what the colonel says to do. No questions asked. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. The general gives an order to the staff sergeant, and the staff sergeant just nods and gets it done. It's chain of command. So being able to be flexible and adaptable to work in those three different settings with those three different groups of people is really the most challenging, but it's also the most refreshing, because what I learned is that people are people when it's all said and done. And they appreciate you and I showing up with intelligence and acumen and subject matter expertise. That's kind of expected, but they really appreciate a leader that takes the time to get to know them and allows ourselves for them to get to know us. And people at the core really appreciate that. So whether you're a contractor, a military personnel, or a civilian, that was the road that I had to navigate. And you have to be flexible and adaptable every day. And so that's why I smile. That's why I glean, because I learned so much from them. I'm the chief of staff, but I'm learning from them. Leaders are learners, and that's why I smile and I glow when I talk about it.
That's such great advice. Oh, that's awesome. Awesome. Go ahead, Ken.
I think one of the things that I see that's so interesting is you've been in positions of leadership for 35 years. What would you say is like the biggest change in like the way that you lead people from when you first started to right now?
Oh, wow. Good question, Ken. So I used to have a leadership attribute about me that was making a negative impact on people, and I didn't know it, because all of us have a blind spot. That's why we need mentors, and that's why we need coaches in our lives, because we don't see ourselves the way other people see us. It's just a reality. That the best thing a leader can do is take a leadership 360 assessment and let others provide input and feedback on how we're leading. So I used to stand firm on this phrase that you all have heard and your listening audience has heard, and it goes like this: you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. Now, that's true most of the time, but unfortunately, as a young leader, I kind of stood on that principle. So when people didn't show up the way I thought they should show up, my negative impact on them wasn't good, and I didn't know it. It took a mentor and a coach to say, come here, I need to have a conversation with you. Did you realize that? And I didn't. Did you know that? How do you think that person feels? And then after getting some schooling, it took me still a couple of years to kind of get out of that mindset. And over time, that's what led me to answer your question earlier the way that I did, being patient with people, because everybody's in a different place, in a different space. Some people can get it after one ask, and other people, you have to repeat it 2 or 3 times before they actually get it and understand it and can run with it. So I have moved away from judging people who, in my humble opinion, didn't show up right. Who am I to determine what right is? And that's the key leadership attribute that I had as a young leader that I no longer have. And I'm also helping other leaders to be careful if that's you, because how you make other people feel now, where we living now in 2023, people don't just take that, and they will vote with their feet much quicker today than they did 20 years ago.
Wow. Yeah. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, well, I was actually, I want to kind of jump a little bit more into that idea of people leaving more with their feet. Is that something that you see a lot? Is that there's a lot of people more willing to, it's like I've heard a lot about like the great resignation. Do you think that there's a lot of merit to that where people are more willing to leave a more challenging environment?
Yep. And a hop, skip, and a jump, they will. Because here's the part that we're missing in terms of leading people. So we manage things, we manage tools and automation, processes and procedures. We manage those, but we lead people. People are looking for leaders to lead them, help to develop them, help them to improve. And in part, it goes beyond what we know. It has a lot to do with whether we actually give a care that they're there. And we live in a society, we live in a nation, we live in a country where people have voted with their feet by demonstrating that I've had enough. If you're not going to treat me like a person because I'm more than just a worker, then I'll go find somewhere, another employer that will. And that's exactly what's been taking place. Now, the pandemic helped to push it because a lot of people were already, quite frankly, unhealthy. And they were unhappy in their current workspace. But the pandemic just kind of opened up the door and provided more opportunities for people to go looking and doing something different. And now that we've gotten accustomed to remote work and telework, more so than people actually being in a physical space with thousands of other people, a lot of people are looking for that flexibility in terms of their working engagement. They want a little bit more of a healthier lifestyle. And this is across the board. This is all generations. This is not just Gen Z and Gen X and millennials, but my generation, baby boomers, we're the same way. And you have to take a look at the advancement of technology. You have to take a look at spending habits. You have to take a look at lifestyles, how much we travel. All of these different factors are involved with why people vote more frequently now with their feet. And in part, it had a lot to do with the Great Resignation. And so leaders need to be aware of that. If you're going to spend a lot of money and energy and resources and casting a wide net to try to attract the best and brightest into your organization, and then interview them, and they accept, and they receive an offer letter, and then they show up, we need to make sure that when they show up, they feel like they're actually included. They're a part of the team. They're a part of the group. Because if not, they're out. And now we have that same old conversation about recruitment and retention that we need to help our human resource professionals in that space, because they exert a lot of work there. So kind of a long-winded answer, but a lot of that is taking place. And it really does tie back into leadership. Everything rises and falls on leadership. And that's just the truth. We have so much evidence of it. We're able to measure it. And when you ask people in their exit interview, why are you leaving? More times than not, they're not talking about the organization. More times than not, they're talking about a person.
Yeah.
Their supervisor, that leader. Trust me, when you take a look at the survey and you take a look at the results from the organizations that do exit interviews, it's a person, not the organization.
Wow. Kevin, I was speaking to someone recently about servant leadership. And I know you speak about that a lot. and he told me this, and I want to get your take on it and how you have navigated this. So one of the first things as a servant leader you need to get past is the perception that you might be soft, right? That a servant leader just lets everybody do whatever they want to do, when really it's quite the opposite. How did you get past that? And what's your definition of servant leadership?
Yes, servant leadership to me has everything to do with how we go about aligning what's in the mind, our acumen and our intelligence with what's in the heart. Because from the heart comes the compassion, the empathy, the care, the value, the respect for others. And typically what happens is we tap into people's personality, and we tap into their heart by demonstrating that we give a care, that they're there. So servant leadership for me, and this is how I teach it and I train people on it, is about aligning those two. Because quite frankly, if you have the title and you have the position, there's already an expectation that you know your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to go beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
But what's really key as it relates to your question around servant leadership is that once we can align those two, now we're serving people. And serving has to do with helping people to develop, providing them resources, providing them training, developmental opportunities, opportunities to maybe go work on a detail in a different position to get more well-rounded. That's really what servant leadership is all about. And I tell leaders all the time, that does not make you a doormat, because one of our core responsibilities as leaders is still hold people accountable. You have to hold people accountable. Otherwise, you're going to allow a poison into your organization.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody's not carrying their pail of water and you don't say anything or you don't do anything, it's going to start to fester. So you have to hold them accountable. So it's not being a doormat at all. It's a type of leadership style that has been talked about a lot. A lot of books have been written on the topic, but we just need more leaders to actually implement and execute on the merits of what it means. And so people know their stuff, that's good, but do you give a care, and are you developing other people that you're responsible to lead? And if the answer is yes, then you are a servant leader, but you still hold people accountable. You can't let people just do what they want. That's how you kind of started out, because now you do come across as being soft, and you could potentially be a doormat, which is not what you want to see happen.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. That is one of the best definitions I ever heard. And give a care. I'm going to steal that one. I love that. I love that.
Well,
and,
I don't mean to cut you off, but listen, here, that's the difference between KFC and Chick-fil-A, right? Chick-fil-A has 3 times fewer outlets, and they're only open 6 days a week.
Yep.
KFC has 3 times as many outlets, and they're open 7 days a week. Yet Chick-fil-A outsells KFC 3 times over. Why? Because they go out of their way. When you show up in the store or through the driveway, they show up and they're like, "We're really glad you're here. How can I serve you? And what's your first name again?" And I mean, all the way through the experience. And it makes a difference, because you're tapping now, again, this is the 4th time I'm saying it, you're tapping into human behavior. And that's what people are looking for.
I love that example. I didn't know about, we love Chick-fil-A, and I got to, in my old position, got to spend a day or 2 at their headquarters in Atlanta, and kind of see what they do, because we were trying to steal at Sprint. We were trying to steal some of what they do. It's all about people, Kevin. It's exactly what you said. Absolutely all about people, the people that they hire, and then how they treat them once they bring them in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing example. Ken, what do you got? Maybe one more question and we can talk some sports.
Well, I was going to talk more about the give a care.
Yeah, go ahead.
Where did you come up with that?
It's just, when I'm talking, I'm thinking and I'm talking, I just kind of go with the flow. And it has a lot to do with just kind of recognizing and acknowledging where a person might be. Give you a quick example. So I have one sibling. He's a younger brother, 3.5 years younger than I am. And he was born with a mental disability. So not only in this nation, but around the world, people who are different get picked on and teased, but they need a higher level of attention to detail, support, advocacy, and they need to be served, because neurologically, they're not at the same level of aptitude as other people their age. Fast forward, I talked about Virginia Commonwealth University. My wife also attended Virginia Commonwealth University, but we met after college. So we met at a informal college reunion. We got married, and from our union, we have 3 sons. and our youngest son is autistic. We found out at the age of 2. So here we go again, right? A neurological imbalance. He's going to need some help. I have to negotiate on his behalf. We're his legal guardians. He's different. And so we live in a society where people pick on people and tease people who are different. And I need to negotiate with the teachers and this school administrators and all of these different programs that help support him in his life. And so they need somebody in their lives that give a care as it relates to their condition. What can I do to serve them to help make things a little bit better given the neurological disorder that's going on in their brains? And that's kind of where it came from. I'm a firm believer that as leaders, it starts in the home, and then it translates into the community and then into the workplace. And that's been my experience. That was my dad's experience. He's a U.S. Marine, oldest of 7 children, enlisted into the Marine Corps right out of high school, and became commissioned. He became a commissioned officer at about the halfway point in his career, and then he retired as a junior officer after 20 years. So it starts at home, and then it just translates into the workplace and into the marketplace. But giving a care is just a phrase that people can kind of relate to, and it kind of reminds them that's one of the many things that leaders need to do.
Wow. Yeah. You got to patent that, Kevin. That is, that is
I don't know if I can. I could start with the trademark, maybe.
I tell you, I still want to talk about sports, but I got to ask you one more thing. And it's, you talk a lot about awakening folks' potential. And what would you say, and Kenny, they probably see about 20 to 30 kids a day in their after school program. It's now a camp for the summer. And I know they teach them a lot of other life skills, Bible lessons, so many things that they do in addition to, feeding them and just making them feel, give a care, making them really feel like they're wanted there, because you said a few times that it starts in a home. You're 100% correct. And a lot of these kids in the impoverished area that Kenny serves in Cleveland don't have that, don't get that in the home. What advice would you give to him to recognize and really awaken potential? Because all those kids have a lot of potential. How does he tap into that? What are some things that you've done in the past that have helped you recognize and then tap into someone's potential?
I can almost guarantee, just meeting you all for the very first time, he's probably already doing it. And what I mean by that is just having those informal conversations, asking people, how are you doing? And asking it in a way that you really want to know, how are you doing? Because what it does, it builds a relationship, and then that relationship turns into trust. And then once you have that trust, then these young people will start to come to us and really start to talk about what's really going on, how they really feel. And oftentimes in those conversations, they'll start to kind of reveal, if you will, what it is they would like to do, the next step that they would like to take. And then based upon what we know, we can kind of advise them one way or another. But it always starts out with just the informal conversation, dialogue, and discussion around how are you doing?
Yeah.
And giving people the chance to kind of open up. And some people will open up after the relationship has been established, and some people will just open up like right away. I'm glad you asked. Nobody else is asking me, so I'm glad you have.
Yeah.
And boom, half an hour later, they're letting it rip.
Yeah.
But I bet you Ken is probably already doing that. So I would say keep it up. Keep doing that, because people just want somebody that they can talk to.
Absolutely. Kevin, amazing advice. All right. Can we do about 5 minutes on sports? Kenny, kick us off with some questions for Kevin here.
All right. The first one that comes to mind, I'll start football.
All right.
What's the vibe with Lamar Jackson? Are people still embracing him? Is it weird? Like, how are people reacting to what's been a weird spring and summer?
Yeah, I and everybody I know and all the Baltimore Raven fans, we absolutely love Lamar. We know deep down inside he's a good guy. He's humble. And it may not have been the wisest move to sort of represent yourself in negotiations at that level for $1 billion franchise, but we love him. We think that he'll do well this upcoming season. The Ravens really needed to sign him because Cincinnati Bengals are up and coming, and you can always count on the Pittsburgh Steelers to be steady. I don't think the Cleveland Browns will make a lot of noise this year, but within that division, which is it's a tough division, they needed to have him to be competitive, and I think he'll do well. They added a superstar wide receiver, Odell Beckham, to the lineup, and he'll be a welcomed addition. Hopefully he can stay healthy, but they have their tight end back. They have the offensive line back. They're trying to brush up on the defense. And I think the Ravens will be perfectly fine. They'll probably finish second in the division behind Cincinnati. And I think they'll make the playoffs, but we'll embrace him. We love him. On the opening game, I don't remember who they play, but in the opening game at M&T Stadium in Baltimore, he'll get a standing ovation, and we'll welcome him back.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. That's awesome. My quick question is VCU basketball.
Yeah.
One of my favorite coaches is Shaka Smart. I mean,
absolutely.
He went to 10, and now look what he's doing with Marquette.
Yep.
But it seems like VCU hasn't been the same since he left. How can they get back on the map?
I told you earlier, everything rises and falls on leadership.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. He's a very unique coach. We knew that as a young man, to be able to take what we thought was an average VCU team, a mid-major, to the Final Four in 2011.
Yeah.
That is, I mean, that accomplishment for that young man to do that. And when you consider the teams that they were able to beat to get there, is absolutely incredible. So that's leadership. That's motivating people, using your influence, getting them to go above and beyond their physical ability, number one, but then having the belief that you can do it. And so going to the University of Texas was tough. That's a very tough conference. And that's a big school with probably 18 times the budget that VCU would have had. That was a big one, but I'm not surprised that Marquette is probably on the same level, maybe just a little bit above VCU, where you're taking some good players, not superstars, and getting them to believe in who you are. And there he is, winning the Big Ten Coach of the Year. We weren't surprised, but the best is yet to come. So he's one of my big fans. I'm one of his big fans as well.
Yeah, you recognize the same things that I see in him. Man, oh man, he just seems like a great coach. And there's going to be at some point another Dwayne Wade, right? Because that was the last huge player out of Marquette.
Yeah,
there'll be another Dwayne Wade that'll say, I want to play for this guy, and put Marquette back on the map. Go ahead, Ken. What do you got? Just maybe one or two more. Oh, he's still on mute.
Hey,
oh, there you
go.
There you go. Yeah.
Well, we've talked basketball, football, baseball. How are people feeling about the Orioles? We talked about them a little bit earlier today, but
yeah, 2 thumbs up on the Orioles this year. They're in second place in their division. They're playing very well. I always have a conversation with people that love baseball that I think Camden Yards is one of the best ballparks in all of Major League Baseball. It is awesome. Inner Harbor, Baltimore, the whole ambiance, but just the way it's structured. They're doing very well. And interestingly enough, they have four players made the All-Star team this year. It's been a while, right? And I took my mentor out to a game. Was it last month? I think when the LA Angels came to town, because I had to see Ohtani, right? I had to see him. And I got a chance to see Mike Trout, those two guys up close and personal. We had good seats right there on the third baseline, and it was incredible. The Orioles didn't win the game, but it was very competitive. But I think they'll do well. I think we'll see them in the postseason. And it has a lot to do with their manager. Their manager is a good leader. He gets it, right? He has a good relationship with the players, because these are young men, 23, 24, 25. And he has good rapport with them. And I think that's the difference maker. And the fans really appreciate it. When they used to be that when the Yankees and the Red Sox would come to town, everybody would have on Yankees and Red Sox uniforms and hats, and But now it's mostly Orioles, regardless of who comes to town. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. We're both with you on that ballpark. We got the opportunity to go several years ago. Unbelievable ambiance, beautiful ballpark. Not a bad seat in the house.
Right.
And that park is a little bit older now, but it still feels like a brand new, park. Here's my last question, and then we want to give you time to let people know how they can connect with you. This is going to be a tough one. Olympics. What is your favorite Olympic moment?
Oh, wow. Okay. So we started in 96 in Atlanta. That was our very, very first Summer Olympics. And I guess I would probably have to start there, and then I want to transition to 2012 London, because those two. So I had always been a huge Carl Lewis fan. I just really enjoyed him and his career and what he was able to accomplish. That guy went to 4 Olympics and picked up gold medals in different sports. Well, in 96, many people may not remember, that was the last hurrah for Carl Lewis. And in the long jump, in the middle of the week, in the long jump, it took his last final 6th jump to jump far enough to win the gold medal.
Wow.
And that was powerful.
Wow.
That was a powerful moment. The crowd erupt. Now that was Michael Johnson's Olympics, because he wore the gold shoes and he did his thing in the 200 and 400. But we were really rooting for Carl Lewis, because he got his start in LA in 1984. By the time he got to 1996 for Atlanta, most people said, oh, he's washed up, go home. No, we were rooting him on. And it took the very last jump for him to win the gold medal and the long jump. And then the rest is history. That was his last medal in the Olympics. Fast forward to 2012 in London. So in 2008 in Beijing, Usain Bolt came on the world scene, and we were like, where'd this guy come from? Out of Jamaica, tiny Jamaica.
Yeah.
But it was in London where he really put on a show, and he had gained a lot of popularity. He was the athlete of the games, and that guy in the 100 and the 200 and in the 4x100 relay broke records. I mean, just demolished the competition. And it just so happens I'm an amateur photographer, so I take my camera with me, a real camera, not my iPhone. And then him and the team, when they did their final lap, their congratulatory lap, their gold medal lap with their Jamaican flags on them, they came around the stadium and they kind of stopped right in that area where I was. And I got a good snap, and I got it downstairs in my basement. So those are my two. Wow. But I already have my tickets for Paris 24. My family and I, we spend the entire 2 weeks there, and we don't have our lodging yet. We're working on that now, but I already have my tickets, and I'm looking forward to it.
That's amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I felt like I was right there with you, man. Wow. Especially on the Carl Lewis one. Wow.
Yeah, man.
Wow.
It's good stuff.
That's amazing. You have been just fantastic, Kevin. We knew it. When first time we looked at your profile, we knew that you've given us so much today. So appreciated. You're such an amazing leader, and your contributions, man, please, we want to continue to lift you up and pray for you, and that you continue, and that those continue. What you do and what you talk about makes a huge, huge difference. So thank you so much. Go ahead, Ken. I saw you come off. No, yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Ken.
I was just going to ask if anyone listening wants to get in contact with you, how can they do so?
Yeah. So the name of my company is the Johnson Leadership Group. And so our website is www.thejohnsonleadershipgroup.com, where we provide leadership development training, executive coaching, also diversity training, and a lot of other things as well. I'm a speaker, mentor, coach, certified in all those spaces. But Kevin at the Johnson Leadership Group is the email address, or they can just reach me directly through the website, would be perfectly fine. I'd be more than happy to connect.
Wow. Awesome. We will make sure that is all in the show notes in case someone is driving and listening to this. Kevin, thank you so much again. You've been so generous with your time because we started a little bit later, but boy, oh boy, we could probably talk to you for the next 5 hours and we wouldn't, we'd be like, hey, did we skip lunch?
Right.
Well, thank you again. We're going to leave it there, folks. This has been, well, Kenny, you take us home because you normally do. Go ahead.
All right, this is Kenny Squared N.
And Kenny and Kevin.
With Sports on the Positive Tips. Thank you again, Kevin. It's been awesome. And we'll talk to you guys next time.
All right. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.